Elias leaned back on his chair and rubbed his eyes. The workshop smelled faintly of burnt metal and lubricant, and the old ventilation fans hummed in the background. It had been another long day of repairing tools, but he was used to it. Life on the colony world of Nedra 7 was never easy, but it was steady, and steady was enough for him. He glanced at the chronometer on the wall. His roommate should have been home by now. Sure enough, the door hissed open a few moments later and Kayla stepped inside. Her tall figure nearly brushed the frame, and the faint bioluminescent lines on her skin pulsed gently, the way they always did when she was tired. She was a Thryn, one of the few members of her species who chose to live among humans. Elias had gotten used to her quiet presence over the past year. "You are still awake," Kayla said in her slightly formal tone. She always sounded as if she were choosing every word carefully. "Yeah," Elias replied, giving her a tired smile. "The generator gave me trouble again. Didn't feel like leaving it for tomorrow." Kayla tilted her head, the alien equivalent of a nod. "You work too much. And you worry too much," Elias said lightly. They had this exchange often, and it always ended the same way, with Kayla giving him that unreadable look of hers before retreating to her room. But tonight was different. Before Kayla could move away, the colony-wide announcement chimed from the wall unit. A sharp mechanical voice followed. "Attention residents. Effective immediately, full lockdown is in place due to the incoming solar storm. Estimated duration, 3 to 4 weeks. All individuals must remain in assigned shelters. Travel between sectors is prohibited." Elias froze. A solar storm that long was rare. Usually they lasted only a day or two, maybe a week at worst. The colony buildings were shielded well, but the storm's radiation meant that no one could step outside without risking their life. He turned toward Kayla. For the first time since he had met her, her usually calm face looked tense. The glow of her markings flickered irregularly as though betraying something she was trying to hide. 3 to 4 weeks, she repeated quietly. Elias shrugged, trying to lighten the mood. "Guess we'll be stuck together for a while. Could be worse. We've got food, water, and enough repair work to keep me busy." Kayla didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the window and pulled the shade down firmly, blocking out the faint shimmer of the atmosphere. Her hands trembled slightly. "It is unfortunate," she said finally. Elias studied her carefully. He had lived with her for a year, but he knew little about her people beyond the basics. The Thryn were private, almost secretive, about many of their traditions. He knew they were strong, with keen senses, and that their glowing skin patterns shifted with mood. But he had never seen her look unsettled. "What's wrong?" he asked. Kayla hesitated. Then she turned, her eyes catching the dim light in a way that made them shine like polished stone. "This season, for my kind, it is different. We call it the cycle of renewal. You call it mating season." Elias blinked. The words sounded strange in her careful voice. "Oh," he said finally. It was the only response his brain managed. Kayla folded her arms, defensive. "It is not as crude as you think. It is biology. During this time, our instincts are stronger. Our emotions, less controlled. Normally, a Thryn returns to their clan where they endure it together. I am not with my clan." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "And now you're stuck here. With me." "Yes." The glow along her arms flickered again. "With you." Silence stretched between them. Elias felt the weight of it pressing down, heavier than the storm outside. He wanted to say something reassuring, but what could he say? He barely understood what she was going through. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Look, we'll figure this out. You've been a good roommate. We'll make it work. If you need space, I'll give it. If you need help, I'll help. Simple as that." Kayla studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if she were trying to decide whether to trust his words. Then slowly she nodded. "Very well," she said. "We endure this storm. Together." The first few days passed in uneasy quiet. The colony's central system delivered daily updates. Radiation levels outside spiked higher and higher, making it clear that no one would leave their shelters anytime soon. Elias kept himself busy repairing small machines in the workshop, while Kayla spent long hours pacing the narrow apartment, restless in a way he had never seen before. She wasn't loud, she wasn't aggressive. But there was a tension in the air around her, like static before a lightning strike. Her glowing markings pulsed brighter each day, shifting in patterns Elias couldn't interpret. Sometimes he caught her staring at him when she thought he wasn't looking. Not hostile, not exactly curious either, something else. Something heavier. By the 5th day, the silence had grown unbearable. "You're going stir-crazy," Elias said as Kayla walked another restless circle through the room. "I am managing," she replied stiffly. "No, you're not," Elias said, standing. "Come on. Let's do something. I've still got that old ship hull in the hangar. We can work on it. Better than pacing holes in the floor." Kayla hesitated. Then, almost reluctantly, she agreed. The hangar was dusty and cluttered, but it was large enough for them to move freely. The ship they had been tinkering with was barely more than a broken shell, long abandoned by some trader. Elias liked to fix pieces of it when he had spare time. Now it became their project. They worked side by side, tightening bolts, rewiring circuits, cleaning rusted panels. Elias tried to keep the mood light, cracking small jokes when something sparked or when he dropped a tool. To his relief, Kayla began responding, first with faint smiles, then with quiet laughter. Her laughter surprised him. It was soft, melodic, nothing like her usual serious tone. For the first time since the lockdown began, the tension eased. But Elias also noticed new things. Kayla moved closer than she usually did, sometimes leaning over his shoulder to check his work, her glowing patterns brushing against his arm. Her presence was intense, almost magnetic. He tried not to think about it too much. At one point, as they struggled to lift a heavy panel together, their hands brushed. Kayla froze, her eyes widening. The glow along her skin brightened sharply, like a flare. Elias quickly stepped back. "Sorry," he muttered. "It is not your fault," she said softly. But her voice carried a weight he couldn't quite name. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. The storm outside howled against the colony's shield domes, a low rumble that seemed endless. Inside, the small apartment felt smaller than ever. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of Kayla's footsteps in the other room. Back and forth, back and forth. He closed his eyes and muttered to himself, 3 more weeks, just 3 more weeks. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning, because Kayla wasn't just restless. She was changing. And he was trapped in the middle of it. The following morning, the colony's sky was a strange shade of violet, filtered through the protective shields. Elias woke to the faint hum of machinery and the soft glow from Kayla's skin drifting through the room. She was already awake, standing by the window, staring outward. "Morning," he said, stretching. "Sleep well?" Kayla turned slowly. "I slept lightly," she said. Her tone was calm, almost too calm. But Elias noticed the faint tremor in her hands. "Anything on your mind?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Kayla hesitated. "I feel unusual today. My instincts are stronger." She glanced away, unable or unwilling to meet his eyes directly. Elias frowned. He had read about Thrin biology before in the colony's cultural archives, but now it seemed more real than anything he had imagined. "Stronger how?" Kayla's glowing markings flickered in a wave along her arms. "More aware, more restless. I notice things, sounds, movements, even emotions more strongly than normal." Elias swallowed. He wasn't sure if he should laugh or worry. "Sounds intense. Want me to give you some space?" Kayla shook her head. "No, I think I should try to remain in normal activities. So, They began their day together, working in the small apartment. Elias fixed the communication panels while Kayla helped him, passing him tools or holding parts steady. Yet, even in these mundane tasks, he noticed subtle differences. She moved with a precision and intensity he had never seen before. Her hands were steady, almost unnaturally so, and she seemed to sense his next move before he even made it. When a panel sparked unexpectedly, Kayla reacted instantly, shielding him from the small electrical discharge. "You're fast," Elias said, impressed. "I am aware," she replied simply. But there was a note of pride in her voice, something human in her tone despite her alien form. By midday, the apartment felt warmer. The glow from Kayla's skin had intensified, shifting into a soft orange hue that pulsed with her breathing. Elias found himself glancing at her more often than usual, noticing how her expression subtly changed when she focused or moved. They paused for lunch. Elias had heated up a packet of synthetic protein paste, and Kayla sat across from him eating, slowly, carefully observing him as he ate. "You study humans often?" Elias said, trying to break the tension. Kayla looked up sharply. "I observe. You call it studying. We call it awareness." Elias chuckled. "Fair enough. So what do you notice today?" Her eyes met his directly this time, and he felt a flicker of something strange, something electric in the air. "You are patient. You do not seem afraid of me." Elias froze, unsure what to say. "Not afraid? Afraid of what?" Kayla paused, her glow dimming slightly. "Of my instincts, of what this season makes me feel. Most humans would avoid a Thryn in this state. Most humans would fear it." Elias swallowed hard. He realized she wasn't speaking metaphorically. The Thryn mating cycle was not just emotional, it affected behavior, perception, and energy. It was instinctual, powerful, and sometimes overwhelming. "I'm not most humans," he said finally. "We'll get through this, I promise, together." Kayla studied him, then nodded slowly. "Very well, together." The next day the storm worsened. The colony's shields creaked under the strain, and occasional tremors rattled the walls. People inside were restless, but Kayla seemed even more affected than the others. Her glowing patterns changed constantly, reflecting shifts in mood, energy, and instinct. Elias noticed that she was more sensitive to sounds. Every hum, beep, or vibration in the apartment seemed to make her pause, sometimes flinching slightly. At first he found it disconcerting, but then he realized that it could be useful. "Can you hear that?" she asked suddenly, tilting her head. "What? I hear nothing unusual." "There is a minor fluctuation in the power grid," she said, her glowing lines brightening. "The generator cycles are off by a fraction of a second. It may not be dangerous yet, but it could escalate." Elias looked at her in awe. She was detecting irregularities he had missed completely. "You're amazing." "I am aware," she corrected. "My instincts are heightened." As days passed, Kayla's energy remained high. She had bursts of movement, pacing, stretching, adjusting panels, followed by periods of quiet concentration. Elias found himself adjusting his schedule to match hers, not because he had to, but because it felt natural. He also noticed something else. Kayla's presence had become magnetic. It was subtle. When she moved around the room, the light seemed to bend slightly, reflecting off her skin. When she spoke, he felt as if her words carried weight beyond meaning. Her instincts made her more alert, more alive, and he couldn't help but admire it. One evening, they were working on the communication relay. Sparks flew from a damaged conduit, and Kayla reacted instantly, grabbing Elias's arm to pull him away. The glow from her skin flared, illuminating the dim hangar. "You're quick," he said, laughing nervously. "I am aware," she replied, but there was a softness in her voice this time. You trust me?" Elias hesitated. "Of course, I have to. Otherwise, we won't get anything done." Kayla's eyes lingered on him, and for a moment Elias felt a strange connection. It wasn't romantic, at least not in the way humans understood, but it was profound. He could feel her instincts, her heightened awareness, her focus, and her trust. It was overwhelming in its own way. By the end of the week, the lockdown had made life strange and compressed. The two shared meals, worked together on repairs, and spent hours just talking. Kyla explained small things about her species, the importance of communal support during their mating season, the historical alliances Thryn had made with other species, and the significance of trust. Elias shared human stories in return, laughing at mistakes he had made when he first arrived on the colony and telling her about Earth's odd traditions. Kayla listened carefully, occasionally making comments that were insightful, sometimes humorous, sometimes profound, but her instincts continued to grow stronger. She would pause suddenly, listening intently to distant hums or vibrations, then adjust systems before Elias even noticed a problem. One night she stood near the window staring out at the storm. Elias watched her, fascinated. The orange glow of her markings pulsed gently in rhythm with her breath. "You are restless," he said softly. Kayla turned, eyes reflecting the faint light from the shields. "Yes. This cycle. It is difficult. I am not used to being away from my clan. Normally, my instincts are shared with others and the pressure is lessened." Elias stepped closer. "You don't have your clan here, but you have me." Her glow brightened for a moment, then dimmed. "Yes. And yet, it is different." He didn't ask what she meant. He simply nodded. Sometimes, understanding meant simply standing there. As the days rolled into one another, Elias realized something important. Kayla's instincts, once seen as a challenge, were actually revealing a side of her he had never known. Her focus, her awareness, her energy, they were strengths. And despite the unusual circumstances, he found himself learning from her, adapting to her rhythms, understanding her in ways few humans could. The lockdown would continue for weeks, the storm outside still raging. But inside their small apartment, a different kind of storm was taking shape, one of understanding, trust, and subtle bonds forming between species. Kayla paused by the table, watching him solder a circuit. You accept me even in this state?" "I do," Elias said simply. "We're stuck together. Might as well make it work. Besides, you're good at what you do." A faint, almost imperceptible smile crossed Kayla's face. "Then, we endure this together." Elias smiled in return, though he couldn't help feeling a shiver of anticipation. He knew the next days would be challenging, not because of the storm outside, but because of the strange, restless energy that Kayla brought into every corner of their lives, and somehow he was beginning to look forward to it. By the second week of the lockdown, the solar storm outside had intensified. The colony's shields hummed under pressure, and distant tremors rattled the walls from time to time. Inside their small apartment, Elias and Kyla had settled into a tense but manageable routine. Elias woke early as usual to check the small generator. Kayla was already awake, standing near the window, her glowing markings pulsing in a slow, rhythmic pattern. She had grown restless again overnight, and Elias could sense it even before she spoke. "Another day of work," he said lightly, trying to ease the tension. "You ready?" Kayla turned her gaze from the window to him. "I am ready." Her tone was steady, yet Elias noticed a faint trembling of her fingers. "But today, I may find it more difficult to remain calm. The cycle grows stronger." Elias frowned. "Difficult how?" She hesitated, then gestured to the glowing lines on her arms and chest. "It affects behavior, perception, and emotion. Normally my clan supports me. We endure this together. In groups I am alone." Elias remembered the Thryn history books he had read in the colony archives. During their mating season, Thryn often stayed in communal spaces, where the instincts could be shared and balanced. Without others, the energy could become overwhelming. I see, he said carefully. So being stuck here, it's harder because it's just you and me. Kayla's glow flickered briefly. Yes, and you are human. You do not understand my instincts, my cycles, my biology. Elias nodded. Maybe not, but I can try. And I can help if you let me. For a moment, Kayla's gaze softened. Then she turned toward the workshop table. Very well. Let us begin. The day was spent repairing the communication array in the corner of the apartment. Sparks flew occasionally, and Kayla's heightened senses were a constant asset. She detected minor faults, loose wires and irregular voltage fluctuations that Elias had missed entirely. You're incredible, he said, handing her a small circuit board. How do you notice all this? I am aware, Kayla replied, but there was more in her tone this time, a hint of vulnerability. Awareness is heightened during the cycle. My senses are sharper, my reactions faster. But it also makes me unstable, emotionally, physically, mentally. Elias hesitated. Unstable? Kayla looked down at her hands. Humans think of instability as danger. For my people, it is natural, controlled by tradition and community. Alone, it becomes difficult to manage. I must focus constantly to maintain balance. Elias realized she was trying hard not to overwhelm him, or herself. He decided not to comment, only to keep working. Sometimes words were unnecessary. After lunch, Elias suggested they take a short break. He leaned back, in his chair, watching Kayla as she examined a small panel of the ship hull. The glow along her body shifted from orange to soft green. Elias had read that Thrin skin patterns reflected mood, but this one was new to him. Green? He asked. What does that mean? Kayla looked up, her eyes meeting his. Calm, focused, controlled. She paused, then added softly, I fear this control may not last long. My instincts grow stronger by the hour. Elias leaned forward. Do you want me to leave you alone for a while? No. Kayla's response was firm. I need human presence. It helps anchor me. Elias frowned. Anchor her? He didn't understand exactly what that meant, but he nodded anyway. He stayed, quietly observing, helping only when asked. As the day went on, Kayla's behaviors became increasingly unusual. She would pause mid-task, staring at nothing, listening to faint vibrations, or tilting her head as if hearing sounds beyond human perception. At one point, she even asked Elias to repeat instructions because she had detected a subtle difference in the tone of his voice, a difference he hadn't even noticed himself. It is strange, Kayla admitted. I notice so much more, yet I struggle to control it. Normally, I would have my clan to rely on, to share this burden. Elias tried to imagine what that must be like, feeling everything intensely, sensing emotions, movements, and sounds, beyond normal perception, without anyone familiar to balance it. He realized just how isolating this cycle must be for her. I may not understand completely, he said, but I'm here. We'll get through this together. Kayla's glow brightened slightly, then dimmed again. Yes, together. That night, Elias noticed a shift in Kayla's mood. She was quieter than usual, almost somber. The apartment felt heavy with anticipation, and he felt an unfamiliar tension in the air. Kayla, he said gently. You've been silent. Are you okay? I am conflicted, she replied. Her glowing markings flickered irregularly. I wish to maintain my dignity and control, yet my instincts, they pull me toward behavior unfamiliar to humans. It is challenging to reconcile both. Elias nodded. I understand. Or at least, I understand that it's difficult. That's enough. Kayla looked at him closely, as if measuring his sincerity. Then she nodded slowly. Enough. For now. They worked in silence for a few hours, repairing minor circuits and testing systems. Elias realized that her presence, though intense, had become comforting. Even with her heightened instincts, she was careful, deliberate, and remarkably focused. By the third week, the storm outside reached its peak. Communication with other sectors was limited, and the colony's energy supply was under strain. The apartment's lights flickered occasionally, and distant alarms reminded everyone that the outside world was dangerous. Kayla's energy, however, had not diminished. If anything, it had increased. She moved with precision and purpose, fixing small malfunctions before they became serious. Elias marveled at how she managed to stay calm despite her instincts pushing her toward heightened alertness. "You're incredible," he said again, handing her a tool. "Do you ever stop?" Kayla shook her head. "Stopping is impossible. I adapt. I endure. It is necessary. Even alone, I must maintain balance. And you? Help me." Elias realized that she had come to rely on his presence not just for companionship, but as an anchor to her instincts. He didn't know if any human could do the same, but he felt honored that she trusted him in such a personal way. One evening, Elias suggested they take a break and play a simple strategy game. Kayla agreed reluctantly, her glow dimming to a soft blue. They played quietly, exchanging occasional words, sometimes laughter, sometimes silence. "You are different from my clan," Kayla said suddenly. They would not play games during the cycle. They would focus only on instincts, rituals, and communal energy. "And you don't?" Elias asked. Kayla shook her head. "I am alone. I adapt. And I find value in observing humans. It teaches me patience, perspective, trust." Elias smiled. "Then maybe we're both learning something." Kayla's glow brightened slightly, and Elias noticed a faint smile on her face. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. By the end of the third week, Elias realized something important. The cycle, which initially seemed like a dangerous, uncontrollable force, was now part of their shared experience. Kayla's instincts had forced him to observe, adapt, and empathize in ways he had never done before. In return, his steady presence gave her balance and calm. The cultural gap between human and Thrin seemed vast at first, but now, Elias understood that mutual respect, patience, and trust could bridge it. Even during the most intense biological and emotional cycles, two species could cooperate, learn, and support one another. That night, as the storm raged outside, Elias and Kayla sat side by side in the dimly lit apartment. She stared out at the violet sky, her glow a gentle mix of green and blue. He watched her quietly, feeling a sense of wonder and responsibility. "You trust me," he said softly. "Yes," Kayla replied. "I trust you, more than I expected. Humans are different, yet reliable. Your presence stabilizes me." Elias nodded. "Then we endure this together." Kayla's glow brightened slightly as if acknowledging his words. And for the first time, Elias felt that they were not just enduring, they were learning, adapting, and growing stronger together. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the small apartment, a different kind of storm was reaching a quiet, steady rhythm, the rhythm of trust, understanding, and a bond forming across species. The storm had been raging for more than 3 weeks now. Outside the colony's shielded domes, solar winds tore through the atmosphere, creating bursts of energy that lit the sky in eerie violet streaks. Inside, the hum of machinery, the occasional tremor, and the flicker of the lights were constant reminders of the danger beyond the walls. Elias sat at the control console, monitoring power levels. He frowned at the readings. "That can't be right," he muttered. The main energy grid was dipping below safe levels, and backup generators were straining to compensate. Kayla hovered nearby, her glowing markings pulsing a steady green. She scanned the readouts with intense focus. There is a fluctuation in Sector 3. If not corrected, it could cascade through the colony. Elias ran a hand through his hair. I thought we had everything stabilized. What now? Kayla stepped closer, her glow brightening to a soft amber. We go outside. The main conduit is exposed in the maintenance bay. It requires manual intervention. Elias's stomach sank. Even with full protective gear, venturing outside during a solar storm was dangerous. We have to go out there now? Yes, Kayla said simply. Delaying will risk failure. The colony depends on it. They suited up in heavy radiation-proof exosuits, each movement slow and deliberate. Elias double-checked his tools, while Kayla calibrated the protective shielding on her suit. The outside world was a violent panorama of light and energy. The violet sky was streaked with solar flares, and gusts of charged particles whipped across the domes. Elias shivered despite the layers of protection. I've never seen anything like this, he said, gripping the handles of his utility pack. Kayla's glow pulsed in synchronization with her breathing. It is hazardous, but it is manageable if we remain vigilant and coordinated. They stepped through the airlock, the hiss of pressurized doors sealing them off from the apartment behind them. The storm's energy pressed against the shields, making the walk to the maintenance bay feel like moving through a vibrating tunnel. Every step had to be calculated, every action deliberate. The maintenance bay was not far, but the journey was tense. Sparks from the storm occasionally flickered through the translucent shields, illuminating the charged air like lightning. Elias noticed Kayla moving with grace and precision, anticipating the sudden bursts of energy before they arrived. You're amazing, he said quietly, almost to himself. I don't know how you do this. Kayla's glow pulsed brighter, but she did not speak. Her senses were attuned to every vibration, every fluctuation in energy, and she guided them safely past weak points in the shielding. As they reached the main conduit, Elias realized the problem was worse than he had expected. One of the energy nodes had been damaged, the protective covering torn away. Sparks leapt from the exposed circuits and the readings spiked dangerously. Stay back, Kayla shouted. I will stabilize it first. Elias stepped aside as she adjusted the wiring with precise movements. Her glow brightened to white, illuminating the bay in stark clarity. Sparks threatened to arc toward them, but Kayla's heightened reflexes allowed her to redirect the flow, rerouting energy safely through a secondary conduit. Almost there, she muttered, her voice tight with focus. Elias watched in awe. Her instincts, amplified by the Thrin mating cycle, allowed her to detect even the slightest anomalies in the flow. It was like she could see the energy itself, guiding her hands and decisions. Suddenly, a secondary surge hit the conduit, stronger than before. Elias felt the heat radiate through his suit. Sparks flew across the floor, and a loud crack echoed through the maintenance bay. Elias, watch the panel, Kayla shouted. He leapt forward instinctively, catching a falling circuit board just before it landed in the sparks. The glow from Kayla's body flared brightly, bathing the entire bay in light. She extended her hands toward the exposed node, her touch precise, controlled, and unerring. Elias could hardly believe what he was seeing. Her instincts were intense, yes, but she was also thinking, calculating, adapting. The combination was almost superhuman. After several tense minutes, Kayla stabilized the conduit. The sparks stopped, the energy readings normalized, and the hum of the main grid returned to a steady rhythm. Elias exhaled shakily. We did it. We fixed it. Kayla's glow dimmed slowly, returning to a gentle green. She turned to him, breathing heavily through her suit. We survived it. Together. Elias nodded, feeling both relief and awe. I couldn't have done it without you. You assisted, she said. Your presence allowed me to focus. Humans are reliable. They spent the next hour checking other nodes, making minor repairs where necessary. Elias realized that Kayla's instincts, once seen as a challenge, had been the key to saving the colony. She had detected dangers he never would have noticed and acted faster than any human could. By the time they returned to the apartment, their suits were streaked with dust and grime, and both were exhausted. The storm outside had not abated, but, inside, they felt a shared sense of accomplishment. Kayla removed her helmet first, letting her glowing markings adjust to the dim interior light. Elias followed, leaning against the wall as he exhaled heavily. "You did amazing," he said, looking at her. "Your instincts, your focus, it saved us." Kayla's glow flickered softly, almost shyly. "You did well too. You stayed calm. You assisted without hesitation. It is rare for humans to remain composed under such pressure." Elias smiled faintly. "I guess we make a good team." "Yes," Kayla said, her voice quiet but firm. "A strong team, even across species." That night. After the adrenaline of the crisis faded, Elias and Kayla sat quietly, eating rations and drinking recycled water. The storm still raged outside, but inside a sense of calm had settled. Elias looked at her thoughtfully. "You know, I've learned something important today." Kayla raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "Humans aren't the only ones who adapt and survive," he said. "I mean, I've seen you today. Your instincts, your focus, your courage. It's incredible. I've learned to trust someone completely different from me, and it worked." Kayla considered his words, her glow pulsing gently. "It is true, humans have resilience. You adapt, you learn, you assist without fear. These qualities are admirable." Elias laughed softly. "So we both learned something today, huh?" "Yes," Kayla said, her glow warming slightly, a sign of contentment. "We both learned." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm's rumble through the shielded walls. For the first time in weeks, it didn't feel oppressive. The storm outside was dangerous, yes, but inside, they had proven that cooperation, trust, and mutual respect could overcome even the harshest conditions. In the days following the crisis, Elias noticed subtle changes in Kayla's behavior. Her instincts remained strong, but she seemed more balanced. The intense energy that had made her restless now flowed more smoothly, allowing her to work and interact without overwhelming herself, or him. Elias realized that the storm, while dangerous, had become a testing ground. It had pushed them both to their limits, forcing them to rely on each other and build a partnership that transcended species and biology. He also realized another truth. The Thryn mating cycle, once feared as a challenge, was not just a period of restlessness or difficulty. It was a time of heightened awareness, energy, and capability, and when guided by trust and understanding, it could become a powerful strength. Kayla, too, seemed to recognize this. Her glow shifted gently as she moved through the apartment, and her eyes held a quiet confidence. The instinctual energy that had threatened to overwhelm her had been harnessed, and she had discovered that humans could provide support in ways her clan never had. That night, as the storm continued to batter the colony, Elias and Kayla sat side by side, exhausted but satisfied. The maintenance bay crisis had tested them both, and they had emerged stronger and more united. "You trust me?" Elias said softly. "Yes," Kayla replied. "I trust you, completely. Your presence, your calm, your understanding, it allowed me to endure." Elias smiled. "Then we endure this, together. No matter the storm." Kayla's glow pulsed in agreement. And in that quiet, shared moment, Elias realized that the bond between them had grown far beyond simple friendship. It was trust forged in fire, tempered by challenge, and strengthened by mutual respect. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Inside, two beings, human and Thryn, had discovered the power of cooperation, courage, and resilience. And for the first time in weeks, Elias felt that, no matter what came next, they could face it together. The solar storm had finally begun to ease. Outside the colony's protective domes, the violet sky gradually softened into streaks of gold and deep blue, signaling the return of calm. The alarms and tremors that had dominated the past weeks grew quieter, and a tentative peace settled over the settlement. Inside their small apartment, Elias and Kayla moved with a newfound ease. The immediate danger had passed, but the days of confinement, the heightened instincts, and the shared struggle had left an indelible mark on both of them. Kayla's glowing markings pulsed gently, a soft mix of blue and green. Her movement no longer carried the restless energy of the past weeks. She seemed balanced, composed, as if the storm had not only passed outside, but also within her. Elias watched her quietly from the console, repairing a small communication device they had salvaged from the maintenance bay. "You seem different today," he said softly, almost hesitant to break the fragile calm. Kayla turned her gaze toward him, her eyes reflecting a mix of fatigue and serenity. "Yes," she said. "The cycle has calmed. The instincts no longer dominate. I can think and act as myself again." Elias smiled faintly. "I'm glad. You handled everything, amazingly." Kayla's glow brightened slightly, a sign of appreciation. "It was not only my effort, your presence, your calm, your trust. It helped me endure the most difficult moments." Elias paused, letting the words sink in. He had expected gratitude perhaps, but not this quiet acknowledgement of their shared struggle. "We endured it together," he said simply. "Yes," Kayla replied, nodding. "Together." The following day, the colony announced that basic operations could resume. Workers would be allowed outside, essential maintenance could be performed, and the temporary restrictions would slowly lift. Elias and Kayla ventured into the hallways for the first time in weeks. The corridors, once eerily quiet, were now filled with residents cautiously emerging from their shelters. Faces familiar and strange alike turned to them, expressions of relief and curiosity crossing human and alien alike. "It's good to see life returning," Elias remarked, glancing around. "Feel normal again." Kayla remained silent for a moment, observing the returning activity. Her glowing markings reflected subtle emotions: relief, curiosity, even quiet amusement. "Normal," she echoed softly. "It is comforting, yet different." The storm changed something within the colony, and within us. Elias nodded. "I think you're right." Back in their apartment, they finally had time to relax fully. Elias cooked a simple meal, and Kayla assisted, her movements precise and deliberate. No longer driven by the cycle, she could move at her own pace, enjoy small moments, and interact with Elias without the intensity of heightened instincts. "You know," Elias said, stirring the protein mix, "I was worried when this storm first hit. I thought I wasn't ready for all this, for everything." Kayla looked at him with quiet understanding. "And yet you were. You adapted. You learned. You assisted. It is human resilience. I have seen it firsthand." Elias smiled faintly. "So I'm not just lucky, I'm dependable?" Kayla's glow pulsed warmly. "Yes, dependable and trustworthy. Even in moments when instinct and chaos could have overcome us, you remained steady. It was remarkable." Elias felt a warmth in his chest he couldn't explain. Kayla's words, simple as they were, carried a weight of respect and acknowledgement that transcended species. As days turned into weeks, the two returned to their usual routines, but the bond between them had strengthened immeasurably. They continued repairing equipment, checking systems, and maintaining the apartment. But now there was laughter, light conversation, and moments of quiet companionship that had been absent during the lockdown. One evening, as the colony celebrated the end of the storm with lights and music streaming through the halls, Elias and Kayla stood by a window overlooking the settlement. Outside, humans and aliens mingled, sharing stories, repairing minor damage, and reconnecting. "It's good," To see everyone again, Elias said, his hands resting on the railing. Kayla's glow reflected the lights outside. Yes, the storm reminded us of the importance of trust, cooperation, and understanding. It was a test of endurance for all species. Elias nodded. And we passed it. Yes, Kayla said softly. Together. The next day, Elias suggested they review the maintenance data from the storm. He wanted to ensure no lingering faults remained in the colony systems. Kayla agreed, her movements calm, methodical, and efficient. As they worked, Elias realized just how much he had learned from Kayla. Her instincts had forced him to observe more carefully, think faster, and act with precision. He had adapted to her rhythms, understood her signals, and discovered a capacity for patience and empathy he hadn't known he possessed. Kayla, in turn, had learned about human resilience, trust, and companionship. Despite the differences in biology and culture, she had found that humans could be anchors, partners, and reliable allies. Their partnership had transcended the initial challenge. The experience had built a foundation of trust and mutual respect that neither species had expected. As the sun set, Elias and Kayla sat quietly in the apartment. The glow of her markings shifted to soft violet, a color of calm and reflection. Elias looked at her and said, I never thought I'd get through something like this. Not with all the danger, the storm, the instincts. Kayla turned her gaze toward him, her eyes calm and focused. And yet we did. Together. The challenges made us stronger and more understanding of each other. Elias smiled. I suppose the storm wasn't all bad. Kayla's glow brightened gently, almost as if acknowledging his humor. No, not all bad. It revealed strengths we did not know we had. And it built a bond beyond seasons, beyond instinct, beyond fear. Elias felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in weeks. The storm had tested them, the cycle had challenged them, but now they had emerged stronger, wiser, and closer than ever. In the following days, Kayla returned to her usual studies of Thrin, culture, and human technology. Elias continued his work on the colony's systems, refining, repairing, and improving. But now, every task, every interaction carried a subtle sense of partnership and mutual understanding. One afternoon, Elias watched Kayla examining a repaired generator. He said, I think we make a good team. Not just during storms or cycles or crises, but always. Kayla paused, looking at him. Yes, she said. I agree. Partnership is not only about survival. It is about trust, respect, and learning from each other. Elias nodded. Then we continue. Together. Kayla's glow pulsed in agreement, gentle and steady. Together. Weeks passed. The colony returned to full operation, and life resumed its rhythm. Elias and Kayla continued their work, their bond quietly growing. They had endured the storm, faced biological challenges, and learned the true strength of cooperation. Elias often reflected on the events of the past month. The storm, the lockdown, Kayla's mating cycle, all had been trials of endurance, trust, and understanding. And through it all, humans had proven their resilience, their capacity to adapt, and their ability to form meaningful bonds even across species. Kayla, too, had learned. She had discovered that humans could be anchors, companions, and allies. That instinct and culture, when combined with patience and trust, could create powerful partnerships. And so, in the quiet moments of the evening, when the colony settled, under calm skies, Elias and Kayla would sit together, sharing stories, laughter, and insights. Their friendship, forged in the crucible of storm and instinct, had become a symbol of unity and understanding between species. No longer just roommates, no longer just human and Thrin. They were partners, allies, and friends. A bond beyond seasons, beyond instinct, beyond fear. And for the first time in weeks, Elias felt truly at peace, knowing that together, they could face any storm that came their way.